Hey everyone, and welcome back to our English First Additional Language Lessons by Miss Lichuti. We are going to go through a very interesting and a very beautiful piece of writing by John Keats, that which is a sonnet, a poem titled "On the Grasshopper and the Cricket." And we'll kickstart our lesson with a brief background of the poet, not the author, of the poet. What I've said in my previous lesson is that it's important to get an idea of what kind of a poet are we reading about, so that we understand also the subject that stimulated, or rather stimulates his creative juices in as far as the subjects that he would be interested to write about. Now, John Keats is an English romantic poet. Now, the question is, what do we mean by romantic poets? Romantic poets were actually poets that embraces the natural world. So romantic poetry is a poetry of the romantic era, and then it's mostly musical. And it means that in this poem, when I hear the word musical, I'm expecting to discover sound and the impact of sound in the poem. And then, however, what is important is that because he is from an era, if not a school of thought, that embraces or that is labeled as romantic poet, meaning that they embrace the natural world. I'm also expecting to read about what nature. Right, and then Keats wanted the world to see the flow of the scientific rationalization of nature. It means that he was against the scientific modification of the world, and then he wanted to embrace nature as it is. Struck by tuberculosis, unfortunately, he suffered from TB like his mother and died only at the age of 25. So he was actually relatively a very young poet. During his time, his poems were not appreciated by the critics. The poem was written in 1816. So remember also, I said you must pay attention to time frame, which gives us the era. It means it's 1816. Where that is back in the year. So it's a very old English poem, and then from the background here we go to understand that he's a young poet. What is important to note is that he is classified or falls under the group of romantic poets that which mostly wrote poems that embraces nature. So and then also they also rely heavily on sound and musical effect and sound. So we are going to learn more about sound. So what comes to your mind is that what kind of a sound are we going to talk about, and what is the impact of that sound in a particular poem, and then how does this poet now talk about nature. Now let us get into the poem, and we now go into the title that says "On the Grasshopper and Cricket." Before we can go to the title, remember I said that when you analyze the poem, you start with the author's background so that you understand the kind of subject that you would write about. And then secondly, now you go into the title, because the title will give us an indication of what the poem is about. But what is important is that also to note the structure of the poem. We've got various structures, like we've got your free verses, we've got ballads, we've got sonnets. Now this one is a sonnet. You need to be in a position to understand what kind of a sonnet is it. Whenever you get a sonnet in an examination, just know that the first question that is expected from you, and that you will get from, definitely that you are going to get from the examiner, is a discussion of the structure. Now this is what you call an Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. You get a mark for that by labeling it. And normally the question of structure is actually 4 marks. And then the first 8 lines of the poem, we call them the octave. You get a mark for that. The last 6 lines, you get the sestet. You get a mark for that. And then the last mark that you're going to get is outlining the rhyme scheme. We are going to outline the rhyme scheme as in when we read the poem. So please bear in mind that whenever you get a sonnet, even if it's not, remember we've got 2 types of sonnets. You can have the Shakespearean sonnet, that is or Elizabethan sonnet, that is sonnet 7-3, that which the structure is different from an Italian sonnet. So on the Grasshopper and Cricket, it's a Petrarchan or Italian sonnet. The first 8 lines, we call them the octave. The last 6 lines of the sonnet, we call them what? The sestet. And then you identify the rhyme scheme. That's how you collect the first 4 marks of the discussion. I'm sorry, the first 4 marks when answering the question of the structure of the sonnet. So if the examiner says discuss the structure of the sonnet, please ensure that you collect all those 4 marks. To say it's an Italian sonnet that consists of 14 lines, you get a mark. 8 lines, the first 8 lines we regard them as the octave, the last 6 lines as the sestet, and then you outline the rhyme scheme, that which we are going to do when we analyze the poem. Now going into the title, it says on the grasshopper and cricket. This is a picture of a cricket and a grasshopper. So we say that they're two tiny insects with big responsibilities. So we are going to learn about symbolism. It means symbolism. It means the two objects or two insects. What is that they represent in the poem? So these two insects are not just insects, because for you and for myself and you, we just see them as insects. But according to Keats, he sees them as two representations, or should I say, they carry a very important responsibility. First and foremost, a grasshopper, this is a grasshopper, is going to represent, or is going to be a symbol of a hot summer. And then a cricket is going to be a symbolical representation of a very cold winter. So we have what you call a juxtaposition. It means when two contrasting ideas come after each other. What is that? What we mean by a contrast? Remember, contrast, it means what? Difference. It means that in the first portion of the sonnet, we are going to read about summer, and then we are going to transition where now we see a contrast, where now the second part we are going to read about what? Winter. So it means that the grasshopper will represent hot summer, and then the cricket will represent what? Cold winter. Remember, we are yet to find out how are they representing summer, and then how are they representing what? A winter. Now let us get into the poem. And then the general idea of the first lines, lines that which are in octave. The season there is summer, that is very hot, and we are going to see not only remember from the title we said on the grasshopper and cricket, but in the octave we are going to now introduce another animal, which are the birds. The birds are faint. It means that they are tired because of the scorching sun, and do not sing. They're not chirping anymore because of the hot sun or a scorching sun, and then they are tired. And then, however, in their silence, the cricket voice is heard. So I said we need to find out. No, it's supposed to be the grasshopper's voice is heard, because remember the cricket only sings during winter. So that's a mistake, pardon me. And then summer is richer, and meadow has just a mown. Meadow, it means that it's a piece of grass, and then it gives us also the description of the kind of summer that we are talking about. Is that we can see that it's extremely hot, because even the birds cannot sing in the first 8 lines, which is the octave. However, the grass leads the luxury of summer, and is later resting at ease in the pleasant shade of a plant. So this is what we are going to come across in the first octave. We are going to see the kind of summer that which Keats is talking about, and then what is the impact of a grasshopper in that presence of that scorching sun. And then how does he use the grasshopper to further certify the fact, or to cement the fact that indeed the beauty of nature is everlasting. Now let us check what is that we need to expect from the sestet. And of course, now in the sestet, we are going to go and experience a different season. Remember, in the octave we are going to read about summer. In the sestet now we are going to read, of course, with winter. There's a change from the octave to the sestet. It means that there's that transition, and then we are no longer outside. We are going to go into indoors now. The setting changes because it's cold. It's extremely cold, and then we are going to see a character who's a listener in the last 6 lines. A listener is sitting alone, sitting before a stove. Of course, you need to sit before a stove to get warm, because it's winter and he's half drowsy. It is very frosty. So what I have picked up already is that these weather conditions are extreme, because the sun is too hot, and then even the winter here is a frost. It means that it's relatively cold. So the coldness has brought silence, like the silence of the heat. Remember, in the octave, the birds were not even chirping or singing anymore because of the extreme weather condition, that which it was very hot. And then just like here, the silence again because of the extreme coldness. However, now the sound of the cricket is there. So there it was a scorching sun where the birds could not even sing, but the sound of the cricket was there. But during winter, even when it is cold, and the silence in that coldness, however, what is omnipresent is that the sound of the cricket is there. So the two insects are going to represent two seasons, and then what is important is to bear in mind that this is a melodious poem that relies on sound to represent the beauty of nature. And let us now go through the poem. We have a background of what is expected from the poem. We gathered information of what possibly the poem is about, but we are going to have now an in-depth understanding when we go through the analysis. The two insects, remember, are going to represent two various seasons, but what is important is then how are they used by the poet to embrace the beauty of nature. The poetry of earth is never dead. When all the birds are faint with the hot sun and hide in cooling trees, a voice will run from hedge to hedge about the new mown need. That is the grasshopper's. He takes the lead in summer luxury. He's never done with his delights, for when he is out of fun, when tired out with fun, he rests at ease beneath some pleasant wheat. The poetry of earth is ceasing never. On a lone winter evening, when the frost has wrought a silence, from the stove there shrills the cricket song, in warmth increasing ever, and seems to one in drowsiness, half lost the grasshoppers among some grassy hills. And then I also want us to take note of punctuation. The poem is filled with commas. Of course, a comma, it means to pause, but then we also have dashes here. So it means that the dashes abilities to create silence within the poem, forcing the reader to stop and take a break wherever one occurs. And then in other instances, they can be referred to musical devices. And I would say they create a bit of suspense and also to introduce a particular sound, or to show to force a reader to pause a bit in such a way that to introduce another subject, or to introduce another explanation. And what is important is that the pause they create mimics the same effect as a comma, and then coaxing the reader into pausing, though on a slightly different scale. Now let us unpick the first line. The poetry of earth is never dead. Right. Now this line is metaphoric. What do we say? What do we mean by metaphoric? Remember, a metaphor is a direct comparison that does not use the word as or like. However, please bear in mind that you will not be requested or required to define the figure of speech, but however, you'll be requested to explain its effectiveness. The poetry of earth is never dead. What does it mean when it says the poetry of earth is never dead? Metronym, it means that replacement of the word life or the beauty of nature. So the poetry of earth actually here refers to the beauty. It refers to the beauty of nature. It says the beauty of nature is never dead. So the beauty of nature is compared to something that is immortal, that is not dying. So it means that the sound of nature, the sound of birds, the sound of the cricket is non-ceasing. It's not ceasing. It's everlasting. So the first line here, it means that nature speaks all year round, whether in the heat of summer or in the cold of winter. This constant speaking is the poetry of what? The poetry of earth. So I've said that the sound here is a symbolism representation of the beauty of nature. So it means that the poet is showing us that the sound that is produced by nature is never mute. even when birds are mute in the first 8 lines. But the poetry of earth is never dead, because we are going to see the grasshopper ability to produce sound even during the scorching sun. So the first line is very bold. The first line is a hyperbolic statement, which is an extended exaggeration to say the poetry of earth is never dead. That brings us to a conclusion that the beauty of nature shall never die. And what is that represent the beauty of nature in the sonnet? Sound. And what kind of a sound are we talking about? A sound of nature, sound from the birds. But what is important here is the sound from the cricket, to say even in the presence of a scorching sun, the cricket sound is non-ending, or it is even present in that scorching sun, to support the statement that indeed the beauty of earth, of nature, is never ending, meaning that the beauty of earth is never dead. Now the second line. Right, and then it says, when all the birds are faint in a hot sun. I've already stated when we were discussing what to expect in our octave that this is a very scorching sun. So this is the kind of weather that we are talking about. And then the birds, not only are we talking about the cricket, there's also what birds, they are faint. It means that they are how? Tired. And what made them to be tired is the scorching sun. So here are the birds, when all the birds are faint with the hot sun, or it means are out down with what they are out. Birds are faint from the hot sun, they hide from the sun, stop singing in order to rest. So they stop singing. It means that now currently in line 2 there is no sound. Remember, we rely on sound to carry and justify the beauty of nature that is never ending. And then they hide in the cooling trees. So even though it's hot, summer has got quite a number of I would say plants, or such as trees, where animals, the birds can do what, can hide to cool off from the scorching sun. But however, after a comma, it says what? A voice will do what? A voice will run. Of course, this is an element of personification, because a voice has been added, a human element with the ability to move or to run. The impact, if not the effectiveness of this line, is to show that there will always be what? A sound. There will always be a sound, even though the birds might be mute because of the hot sun, and then they are cooling off. It does not mean the beauty of nature stops. The beauty of nature doesn't stop, because even there is a voice that will do what? That will run. It means that there is a voice that will be present. And then now it says, from hedge to hedge, it gives us a setting. This gives us a setting. When you talk about hedges, these are hedges. Let me just expand my screen so that we see hedges, because imagery is important in a poem. For us to understand a poem, imagery plays an important role. From hedge to hedge, about the new mown mead. When we talk about hedge, is a piece of grassland, especially one used for hay, a fence or boundary formed by closely growing bushes. So this gives us a setting. It says from hedge to hedge. So this is a hedge and a new mown mead. This is a new mown mead. So I've said that when you are reading a poem, imagery plays an important role, because once you are able to paint an image, you breathe life into the poem. So this now becomes a setting. We have moved from the trees, where now the birds are cooling off because of the scorching sun. And then the poet says that, however, the sound will be there because a voice will run. But where is that voice? That voice is coming from, or it's moving from hedge to hedge, and in the what about the new mown mead. But now let us go back to the poem and understand. Okay, fine. Then what voice is that? What voice is that? From hedge to hedge, I've said that it gives us the setting, and then a voice, a hedge, sorry, from hedge to hedge, about the new mown mead. That is what now? The grasshopper. The birds are silent because of the heat. They are chilling or hiding in the cooling trees to cool off from the scorching sun. However, from hedge to hedge, I said this is a setting, and we've seen what is a hedge. About the new moon, we've seen the new moon. The voice will run. What is that voice? The voice of what? Of the grasshopper. Remember the title, On the Grasshopper and Cricket. Now we see the role of a grasshopper. It says even in the presence of the scorching heat, when the birds are silent, the beauty of nature is never ceasing, because there is a presence of what sound that comes from what? From the grasshopper. And then we've got a personal pronoun he, that which now takes add a human quality to this insect, to say he takes the lead. When by saying he, it means that the poet adds human quality to a grasshopper, to give a grasshopper a sense of power. Because normally when you take a lead, it means that you are a leader, you are a manager. So he takes a lead. Why is he taking a lead? Remember, the birds are already silent. So because we want to justify from that bold statement that opened the sonnet, that the beauty or the poetry of earth is never dead, he says that even in the absence of the singing of the birds, there is something that is going to take the lead, that which is what? A grasshopper. It means that there is a sound that is going to be produced by the grasshopper to ensure that indeed the beauty of nature is never dead. And what represents the beauty of nature here? It is what? The sound that is produced by the grasshopper. So he takes the lead. It means that now the grasshopper is in charge, because remember what the birds are no longer singing because of the scorching heat. And then in summer luxury, he has never done with his delight. For when tired out of fun, he rests at ease beneath some pleasant weed. Now let us unpack these two lines. And then when you say that you take delight, it's still personification. And then in summer luxury has never done juxtaposition for winter that you are going to read about. And then the grasshopper indeed takes the lead, like he is in charge, and he delights himself with his delight in winter. And then in summer luxury. And then when he's done, when the grasshopper now is done, it means that he is done producing sound and moving from hedge to hedge with his delight. These are positive words. I've also noted that you must take a note of a diction in the poem. You know, words such as delight and luxury. I've said that diction, which is the choice of words by the poet, gives us also the attitude of the poet towards the subject that is being discussed. When you look at the word luxury actually can mean a state of great comfort or elegance, especially when involving great expense. And then when you delight, it means that when you find pleasure. So it means that summer has been described as a luxurious season, where one can find what? A state of comfort. And what finds a state of comfort is the grasshopper, because it is able to continue or to sustain the beauty of nature by singing even in the presence of a scorching sun. And then when he delights, it means that when he is now satisfied, for when tired out of fun, he has now been moving from hedge to hedge, and he is now tired. What does he do? He rests beneath some pleasant weeds. He rests beneath some pleasant weeds. Grade 12s, bear in mind that under the figures of speech, we also have the figures of speech that are what we call contradictions. It means that indicate lines that contradict one another for a specific purpose. Now he says that he delights. I'm sorry, pardon me. All right, thank you. In summer luxury he has never done, or for when he's tired, in somewhat pleasant weed. When you look at the word weeds are actually unwanted plants that are actually dry, unattractive. But here they are regarded as how pleasant. And this is an oxymoron. An oxymoron is when two words that contradict one another, they are placed next to each other in a sentence. For example, if I can say you are beautifully ugly, maybe that the poetry there means that that person on the outside is a very beautiful person, attractive, but maybe she has a very nasty character. So when two words that are contradictory to one another are placed next to each other in a sentence, it is an oxymoron. The effectiveness of that oxymoron is to say that, remember here we are embracing the beauty of nature. So even something as that is normally disregarded, such as weed, in the context of the poem, the weeds are pleasant. And the word pleasant has a very positive connotation. It paints a positive imagery, because something that brings pleasure is something that is beautiful, satisfying. So the grasshopper is done singing, And this is the last line of the octave. Remember, in the octave, we rely on the grasshopper and summer. And then now we are going to transition to the sestet, where we read about winter and see how the beauty of nature is sustained during winter. Bear in mind the first line, the poetry of earth is never dead, which is a metaphoric representation of the beauty of nature that is never ending. And what represents the beauty of nature in this poem is the sound that is produced by the two insects. Now we transition and go to we transition and go to now we go to the sestet, right? So the grasshopper is done. The grasshopper is satisfied because it has played its role. The role was to sustain the sound when the birds were mute, was to sing, was to run, was to take the lead. Now the poetry of earth is ceasing never. This statement, and then we've got the semicolon, and then it correlates with the first bold line that opened the octave to say the poetry of earth is never dead. Now it says that the poetry of earth is ceasing never. Is the same sentiments that are echoed in the first line to say that it's non-ending. On a lone winter, remember we have been reading about a hot summer. Now we are transitioning into a lone winter. And then when you look at the word lone, now in the sestet, the setting changes and the season changes to say that in a lone winter evening. Lone, it means that they're very lonely. So winter has been given a human quality with the ability to be lonely, right? To show that how cold the winter is. On a lone winter evening, when frost, not only is it cold, but we've got the presence of frost, has wrought what? A silence. From there, I want us to unpack this line. The winter is already lonely when the frost, and then there's a presence of frost, has wrought what? A silence. The phrase wrought a silence is used to describe the condition of living things during the winter's evening. It is chilling cold outside and snow is everywhere. Wrought means to do what? To exert force upon something. Hence, the winter has forced the humans as well as animals to remain what? To remain silent. What is the similarity? What remained silent? Remember in the octave, summer, a scorching sun forced the birds to be silent. Here now, the frost causes everyone to be how? Silent. Because when the word rod, it means that to exert force. Because a rod means to exert force upon, meaning that now it's extremely cold. Now there is also what? Silence. The same way that there was silence when the birds stopped singing to find shade under the cooling trees because it was hot in the octave. The same silence is sustained now in the sestet. However, the silence now is brought forth by the frost and extreme coldness. But remember, what needs to be sustained from the poem is that the poetry of earth is never dead. Now, we need to find out during winter, how is the poetry of earth never dead? From the stove setting, from the stove, remember we are now inside the house. We are no longer outside the house during summer. It's winter, we are inside the house. There shrills. We come across onomatopoeia, words that represent a sound. There shrills the cricket saw. Shrill is a sound that is produced by the cricket. So we read about the grasshopper that sings during the hot summer. Now we read about the silence of winter and the loneliness of winter. However, in the midst of that silence, the beauty of earth is never dead. The beauty of earth, or the poetry of earth, is sustained. How is it sustained during winter? There is a shrill sound that is produced by the what? By the cricket. So the cricket carries over from what? The grasshopper. Remember from the octave, the grasshopper, once it is satisfied, what does it do? It finds, it rests he rests beneath some pleasant winds. When now the grasshopper is resting, the poetry of earth continues because it says it's never dead. How does it continue? Because now in the resting period of a grasshopper, the cricket comes forth with its a shrilling sound, in warmth increasing ever, and seems to one in drowsiness half lost. So there is a character here, don't be confused by this line. There is a character of someone who is near the stove, drowsing because he's falling asleep. The grasshopper among some grassy hills. So in essence, the concluding lines of the sonnet on the grasshopper and cricket, the listener of the song mistaken the cricket song for the grasshopper song and says that the cricket song reminds him of a grasshopper and seems to one is drowsy half lost. The grasshopper is among some grassy hills. Both songs are part of nature, persistent and loving force. And then I did explain the lone summer. And then what is important, and then what is that we have grasped from this poem. I'm going to start first with a tone and mood. The tone and mood of the poem is a joyful mood or a celebratory mood. Now, whenever you are able to identify such statements to say, oh, I think this is a pleasant tone or a joyful tone, you must use evidence from the poem to support your evidence. And I can have quite a number of lines that I can use to support the statement that this is a celebratory tone. Because one, for example, I can take a line where the speaker or the poet speaks about the ability of the grasshopper to rest in the pleasant weed. So he celebrates the beauty of nature because even the weeds that we don't see them as being beautiful in the context of the poem, they are regarded as being pleasant, meaning that they bring a sense of satisfaction to the grasshopper. What is also important is also to note the fact that of the ability of the two insects and how they are able to sustain the beauty of nature in a form of continuing to produce sound even in extreme weather conditions. For example, a grasshopper is able to produce sound even in extreme hot sun, where the cricket is ability to produce sound in the and in the extreme cold weather conditions. So in essence, we can say the tone and the mood is a joyful and a celebratory tone where the poet celebrates the beauty of nature. And then we also need to identify the themes. The questions of themes are important. These are higher order questions, and where the examiners may ask you to discuss a particular theme based on the poem. There's a beauty, the theme of the beauty of nature. The sonnet describes the physical world and its natural beauty. It is about the communication, how animals or insects here communicate in nature, but what is important, how they are used to represent the beauty of nature by the sound that they produce. And then there's also the theme of immortality. It means non-ending, because the two statement, one of the themes of the sonnet is that it is eternal. It means that the beauty, if not the poetry of earth, is non-ending. So what is important is to analyze the poem to understand, but whenever you are asked about questions regarding the figure of speech, don't give us the definitions, but give us what you must give us the effectiveness. In the next segment, we are going to go through questions based on the very same poem, and I'll show you how to respond to questions based on poetry. Thank you so much. I hope this was a fruitful lesson in preparation for our final examination paper 2.